You would think that a lot of this discussion would be about the economy, about oil, about the ruble. How much of it is?
Well, they did start the show with some questions about economy and inflation, and then talked about the road and foreign policy. And then there were people calling from faraway cities saying they don't get salaries on time. And Putin was saying that he'll take care of that right away.
Yeah, and there's also
one of the first questions.
Sorry, excuse me, Anya.
One of the first questions. The first question was about food inflation, and a woman was calling and saying that last year she paid a certain amount of money for her week's food supply, and now she has to pay twice as much. Like, what's happening? Why federal statistic has different numbers? And Putin assured her that the ban that Russia imposed on certain imports after Europe imposed sanctions on Russia, that was a conscious step. So Russian agriculture can expand. And he mentioned that last year GDP fell and manufacturing fell, but not agriculture. So he said that that was one of the steps. So another question was about economy, and he said that there are some grounds for optimism. So he said the central bank said the economy can contract as much as 1%, but Putin said that now we have maybe like some grounds for optimism. But people are not very fast to believe him, because last year he promised that ruble will rebound, but ruble actually fell to the all-time low this January. So people are listening and thinking. Then, of course, there was a question about personal life.
Okay.
You know, he divorced a few years back, and he said that his ex-wife is happy and that he's happy as well.
Good. Well, that's important to have an ex-wife that's happy, Anya. So, Mark, I want to bring you in because you know a lot about Russia. You actually, overall, think that investing in Russia is not a bad idea.
Well, look, I think investing in Russia is not a bad idea in the sense that things are cheap. Right? And some of their great companies like Sberbank, bank with 68% market share. We were talking about the problems with the banks here and not making money. Sberbank makes a lot of money. But there are some issues investing in Russia.
Yeah, I mean, usually if something is cheap, there's a reason, right? There's, in this case, geopolitical risk. The ruble is falling. Doesn't look like it's going to stop falling anytime soon. The country is in recession.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. It's all, again, about expectations. So 2 years ago, the economy was in free fall, and they did what a lot of good countries do. They dropped some bombs in a desert, and that got the economy to fall less this year, and it has showing signs of improvement. So it's that improvement on the margin that's got people excited. And the ruble really has stabilized. Now it needs oil to continue stabilizing, but there are some promising signs. And when things are as cheap as they are, I mean, some of the cheapest stocks on the planet, you have to at least look around.
That sentiment shift reflecting in the flows, Matt.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, here we have #BTV chart 937 in our chart library. You can see this is an ETF, and we saw outflows all the way until just the beginning of this month, really. I was thinking that I saw some analyst upgrades as well, and I looked back through the notes. Credit Suisse actually advised investors to switch out of Mexico and into Russia. In a way, they raised their rating to a 25% underweight. So it's not an all-out buy, but you are seeing people starting to get into it.
Mark, clearly people believe in what you're saying this morning. My question, just to turn it around, would be, OK, they're cheap. When was the last time they were expensive?
It's a great point. And so it's variations of cheap. So they're stupid cheap, like they were at the end of '98, or again in 2009. And today they're just cheap. But we like Russia. We like Russian equities. We're a little bit overweight Russia. We run an emerging markets fund, and we're a little overweight Russia. And one of my favorite managers, actually from your old hometown in London, Prosperity, they're pounding the table right now on increasing Russian exposure.
But Mark, coming back to what Vanya said about geopolitical risk, I mean, there's a lot of uncertainty just about the rule of law. I mean, I've been following this on Top Live, the various questions, which are pretty amazing. They asked about the Panama Papers, but one of the things they asked about were these parliamentary elections that were coming up. And his response was, on the record, he said, it doesn't matter who votes, it matters who counts the votes. Doesn't that really raise questions about an investment in that country?
Well, he may have been poking fun at us down in Florida a few years ago. No, I'm just kidding. But no, look, the rule of law is simple in Russia. Right? It's Putin's law. Yet, he has an 85% approval rating. And he has made the majority of people's lives better, if you go back to where they were 10, 12 years ago. So, look, there's certainly geopolitical risks. You and I were talking before the show about the planes buzzing, the U.S. destroyer, right out of Top Gun, my favorite movie of all time. And that's real, but that also goes to national pride, right? The Russians want to see that they are flying their airplanes around and their ships are sailing and they're feeling strong. And right now, everything economically, I believe, is about confidence. If you have confidence, you're confident as a country, as a leader, then things are good. And you look at world leaders on the world stage, who is more confident and right now more effective than Putin?
Mark Yusko, sticking with us. Bloomberg's Anya Andrianova from Moscow, thank you very much for joining us. I know we're several hours in. It is still going. She's going to be busy today.